So here's some of the stages of wealth building that I've noticed. I think in the beginning, and everyone's at different stages here. Some people have a whole bunch of debt and not much income. They don't have much in reserves. Some people have no debts and they don't have a lot of reserves. Some people have a bunch of reserves. They have their debts all paid off and they're ready to go. And some people are already investing and making it work. So just stepping back and looking at this. So stage one is kind of like building up that cash. And again, like I said earlier, frugality is key. Living on less and setting up automatic savings. Kathy and I were always living paycheck to paycheck, always trying to, keep up and make it work. And once what we did is we set up an automatic withdrawal from our checking account in two different accounts. One was an emergency fund, one was an investing fund. And so every month, the same amount would come right out of our checking account. It would basically take it right off the top and it would go right into these money market accounts to hold that and start to build up. So this is where savings is key. Being frugal, living on less, really looking at, like I said earlier, looking at your life and saying, what are the things that don't bring me a ton of joy? What are the things that absolutely bring you lots of joy that you just can't do without? But maybe stepping back and looking at what are the things that I could cut out now and give up a little bit now, a little bit of pain now, if you want to call it pain, for a much better future later. So building up that cash, if you can build up to about $35,000 to $40,000, and maybe it's going to take you a year, maybe it's going to take you 2 years, depending on where you are. But building up that cash, even when you get your first couple $1,000s in reserves, if you don't have that now, I think the average American family has less than $500 in savings. I've read an article about that, which is kind of amazing and shocking. But really stepping back and saying, okay, I'm going to build this up. When you get in that mindset of, wow, we have a few $1,000s in the bank, or we have $10,000 in the bank, there is a mindset shift that absolutely happens. You start coming from a place of abundance, you start seeing opportunities, and you can act on those opportunities when they arise instead of saying, oh man, I wish I could take advantage of this opportunity. So building up that cash, $35,000 to $40,000 is a great amount to get built up to. Again, it might take you a couple years to do that, but once you get there, then you absolutely can kick in your investing plan to really start creating some passive cash flow and income. Obviously, number two here, paying off bad debts, looking at those credit cards that are high interest rate, high interest debt. Improving your credit score. Your credit score is key for investing. No matter what type of investing you're doing, it can really help. So that's key, absolutely vital. So often you might be doing that at the same time. You might be really looking at those highest interest credit cards and paying those down, but also setting up that automatic savings so you're building up some reserves at the same time. Do it at the same time. And then if you, really taking a look at your credit score, and I'll give you a resource on how to improve that to really get your credit score up into the high 7s, low 8s, and then you can really rock it investing wise. And then obviously step number 3 is investing and reinvesting those returns. So, Kathy and I in the beginning, we had our first house and we house hacked it, meaning we took the lower level of our house, we turned these 2 different units, 2 different rooms with separate entrances into small apartments. And that's when we became landlords back in 1997. We got to see what it's like to be a landlord, and basically we lived pretty much mortgage free, because as we rented out those rooms, they were helping to cover our mortgage. And then we took it to the next level and we really house hacked when we really wanted to get in a good position. And we took our master bedroom, which had an external entrance, so we blocked that off, and we lived in a different one of the guest rooms, and we had that. So we had 3 of the rooms in our house rented out, and that's how we got to be landlords in the beginning. So that's house hacking. You can do that different ways. You can house hack by getting a duplex. You can live on one side and have a tenant in the other. You can do a fix and flip, where you can actually live in the property, be working on it at the same time, get it all fixed up, sell it and move up to a larger property, do the same thing. You can even pull some, you can do a cash out refi and use that for investing. So it depends where you are in the process right now, but house hacking in the beginning can be a really, really great way to move into creating real wealth and getting into the investing game. And if you're beyond that, you do have the reserves, you've got your bad debts paid off, then going in and really self-educating, learning as much as you can about investing and finding guides and mentors to help you on that journey, and then taking consistent action. So I mentioned improving your credit score. Kathy and I have worked with this company for years, Credit IQ. It's creditiq.org. I don't get anything for recommending them. It's just we just believe in them. We've seen what it did for our credit score, which has allowed us to be better real estate investors, get better rates, get more loans and all that. So Credit IQ, if you need to get your credit score pumped up, they're really helpful. So let's talk about getting to financial freedom. In the beginning, maybe you're at a place where you're cash flow negative. I asked you to think about how much does your current lifestyle cost and how you can reduce that. So you might be in a cash flow negative place where you're not making enough and there's not enough cash flow each month. You're in cash flow negative territory, which can be dangerous. And a lot of time your debt is increasing. The second phase you can get to is being cash flow neutral. This is when you really look at your spending, how you can be a bit more frugal and live within your means, and then you can get to cash flow neutral, where you're making just enough to cover your expenses and cover your lifestyle. The third phase would be getting to cash flow positive. This is where you have more money coming in each month than your expenses and your lifestyle. And when you get to a place of cash flow positive, this is where it's really great to start directing all that money into savings to get prepared for investing. And then once you get to that place where you're acquiring assets, whether that be with stocks or business or real estate, you get to a place where you start to create some passive cash flow and cash flow coming in every month. And once you get to a certain place of enough cash flow coming in every month, obviously then you're in a place of financial freedom. That's where you are job optional, where there's enough cash flow coming in every month to cover your living expenses, to cover your lifestyle. That is financial freedom. Great book here, Set for Life by Scott Trench. He's the CEO of Bigger Pockets. Really very helpful. It starts in the beginning of getting on your feet and getting started, moves all the way through until you get into in those later phases where you're cash flow positive and can really start investing. But in this, Scott says, financial freedom is a state in which one has enough income from return on assets that they no longer need wage-paying work to permanently sustain their lifestyle. So it's exactly what we're talking about here. That's what real wealth is to us. That's why we called our group Real Wealth. Okay, so let's talk about where to invest. We talked about this earlier, where you can invest and how to do that. So there is the stock market, and this is where most Americans invest. It's really interesting, and it's kind of handed down, and the education comes from Wall Street. A lot of that is, they have more education out there, financial advisors, financial planners. So this is one place you can invest. The challenge is, for most, it's hard to understand. It's really hard to understand the stock market. There's some real geniuses out there who study it day in and day out. They've gone to school for it. They have master's degrees in it and PhDs in it. And even those people sometimes have a hard time making it work. Many do, but for most people, it's hard to understand it. And sometimes the stock market's kind of like a casino. It's like you go, you invest, you're like, wow, I did really well. How did I do that? How did that work? And sometimes, you lose it all. And, it can also be volatile. It's fast moving. So, yes, Kathy and I invest in stocks, but we don't put a majority of our focus in there. The reason why it's volatile, it's fast moving. You have to be really on your toes. You have to track it almost daily to really succeed in it. And you usually have to invest 100% of your money in there. You have to put, whatever you're going to buy, but we'll talk about that in a bit. And you really never own the whole asset outright in the end. So that's the key, and that's one thing to look at for stock market. Another thing you can do is to own your own business. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of this. I've been self-employed since I was 20. I've owned a health club. I was in a business coach and a speaker and author, and then with Real Wealth Network. So owning your own business can be great. However, it must be a systematized business. You don't want to just create a job for yourself where you don't have that freedom. You need to create a systematized business that really is self-managing. It's also not a simple approach. It's like, business is challenging. To learn it, to do it right, and to stay in business, especially in these times. So unless, like, if you buy a franchise, that can be easier. It's more spelled out for you and just kind of follow the steps. That can be helpful. But it takes a full-time dedication. So if you are an employee, a W-2 worker, starting your own business on the side can be challenging to really grow something. It can be done, but it can definitely be more challenging. And then real estate. So obviously this is our favorite way to grow wealth and to create wealth. And so like I said, Kathy and I've been doing it since 1997. It's why we started Real Wealth Network, to help people invest and learn about real estate investing, and to support and to create a network that we thought was going to be a couple hundred people. Little did we know that today it would be 52,000 people that we've helped. So it's really cool. So real estate's it's easier to understand. It's just, you're buying a house, which, most of us live in a house. It's just buying a house and you can grow from there. It's also it's slower moving. The real estate market moves slower than the stock market. So you can kind of see things coming and make your adjustments and shifts when you need to. Also, as Kathy always says, last time I checked, people love to live indoors. So people need a place to live. It's something that's going. There's a lot of businesses that can go out of business, and we've seen that with the bankruptcies that are happening today. So a lot of times investing in a business or in stocks in a business can be a little bit more challenging, because people don't always need that service. They always need a place to live. Also about real estate, you can use leverage and grow it over time. And you can own a portfolio of property that you own outright in the future. So one of the things that Kathy says in this awesome book, Retire Rich with Rentals, she says having a high income is nice to live on, but it's not going to last. The best way to prepare to stop working is by investing in income producing assets like systematized businesses and real estate. So we really love real estate. Here's some of the really great reasons we think it's rental properties help build wealth, and they do that through income, also through appreciation, also through amortization of paying down the loan, and also the tax benefits that come with that. So investors can really benefit from leverage. This is one of the things that we really love the most, is that real estate is one of the very few investments where you only have to put down 20% of the cost, and then you can use OPM for the rest, or other people's money. So there's not many investments where you can only put 20% down. So let's talk about the power of leverage and how this works. So for example, let's say we got Jim. So Jim, if he uses $100,000, he can invest that and he can buy gold. He gets $100,000 worth of gold. If we got Mary, she uses $100,000, same 100,000, and she buys stocks. Let's say she buys them on margin, so she gets $200,000 worth of stocks for $100,000. And then let's take a look at Pat. So if Pat uses $100,000 as 20% down to buy a property, Pat can get a property for $500,000. These are all kind of rounded off. Yes, there's some closing costs and things like that, but roughly a $500,000 value is what Pat can get. So let's go into the future and let's look at 15 years later. So 15 years in the future, let's look at these three folks and how they did, assuming a 5% annual growth. Nothing crazy. Okay, so Jim's gold is now worth $208,000. Mary's stock is worth $415,000 at 5% growth over 15 years, but she has to pay back that 100,000 margin, and she has the 100,000 in capital. And then we look at Pat. Now Pat's property, holding it over 15 years, the properties that Pat bought, probably multiple properties, assuming a 5% annual growth, is worth about $1 million. So that $400,000 loan is now paid down to $260,000. That's what Pat owes on that loan after 15 years, probably assuming a 30-year fixed loan. So Jim made a $108,000 profit on his gold. Mary made a $215,000 profit on her stock. And Pat's property, what did he make or she make? $740,000 profit. So look at the power of leverage over time when 20% is down, rather than having to put down, basically 50%, if you will, in the margin. Or with gold, you have to buy 100%. You have to put that whole thing. Let's look at some other benefits. Look at what Pat gets. More bonuses, really. The properties were rented. The properties that Pat bought were rented over those 15 years, producing income after expenses. So the cash flow, basically, getting cash flow every month, where the rent covers more than the principal, the interest, the taxes, the insurance, all that. So 6% of that $100,000 is an additional $90,000 in 15 years. So let's say if Pat's making about 6% on those properties over time, that's an additional $90,000 that Pat gets on top of that other profit. Pat has $830,000 in equity on this property or properties, plus the monthly rental income. So all that monthly rental income that's continuously coming in, Pat's also getting that. So after another 15 years or even sooner, if Pat takes that money and starts the extra cash flow, starts putting in back in that extra 90,000 toward the loan, instead of just playing with it or spending it, put it back toward paying the loan down, Pat could be in a great position even in 20 years and get to a place where Pat has a whole bunch of these rental properties, all cash flowing, bringing in that monthly rent, and has a really nice net worth. Another quote from Kathy's book, Retire Rich. To create your strategy, you got to figure out how many properties you would need to buy and hold, and over what period of time, to create the income and the lifestyle you're hoping for. So this is exactly what our investment counselors will sit down and work with you on. They'll take a look at where do you want to be, and that's why it's important for you to get clear on your income, get clear on your lifestyle. What's the lifestyle that you want? What does it look like? What does it look like to live life on your own terms? Of course, you want to go through this process tracking, keeping track of your income, your expenses. You want to have a cash flow statement that shows your monthly cash flow. You want to review that every single month without fail. And you also want to have a net worth statement that shows you how many assets you have and what they're worth, and also all of your liabilities, any of your debts, and then looking at that net worth of how much is your net worth, and hopefully watching that increase over time. Really important to do. And yes, it can be a lot of work. Keep doing all this type of work, and some people just despise it and despise the bookkeeping and all that. Another great book I highly recommend. This comes from Dan Sullivan. He founded Strategic Coach back in the 80s. It's a program Kathy and I have both been through. Really powerful for entrepreneurs and people wanting to really get their life in a good place now and into the future. So this book just came out, Who Not How. And Dan writes in it, he writes, by expanding your vision and getting team members to help you attain that vision, you can focus on the few hows that are your unique focus. So let's try to do it, instead of trying to do everything yourself, you find the people with unique abilities that can help you. So it all starts with setting your goal, which you're doing now, a new and bigger vision of your own future. And then you can step back and ask, who can help me do this? Who can help me do this? So starting with who, not how. Instead of how can I do this, the first question you should ask is who can help me do this? So getting the help you need, it might be getting a bookkeeper. This is, I think, the first most important thing you can do as an investor is having a bookkeeper. Unless you're a bookkeeper or you love bookkeeping and it's your unique ability, it's something you're really good at and you love doing, hiring a bookkeeper can be the first most important thing you can do. Also having a great CPA to help you with taxes, having a great attorney to help you with asset protection, having a virtual assistant that can help you on a lot of the follow-up and managing property managers or however you want to do it, and also working with your investment counselor who are about to bring on, and you can ask any questions today. And obviously meeting with your investment counselor can be really helpful in getting the help you need. So obviously going to help you clarify your goals. And sometimes when you set that goal, it can, for some people, it can create some anxiety. You're like, oh man, this is big. I don't know. I'm just going to avoid it. Let me just go on watch Netflix or something like that. So the key is to step back. And I, in this description of this program, that I'm going to give you something that can lower the stress level on those goals. And this, again, this comes from Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach, stepping back. He calls it the 25-year framework. So stepping back and looking at your big goals and where you want to be 25 years from now. So some of us are getting older and maybe 25 years is too long of a window. So even just bringing it back to the 10 years, think about your goals over the next 10 years. And if you think about those big goals, a lot of times it's like we can accomplish a lot more than we think we can over time. And often it feels like things are taking longer than they think in the short term. But if you look at it in quarters of progress, that's 40 quarters you get to work on your goals, bringing it down. So every quarter you sit down, you say, okay, what's this quarter about? How did last quarter go? What worked? what didn't work, and what am I going to carry forward, and what am I going to do this quarter. So it really expands your relationship with time. You're like, oh, wow, I have 40 quarters. I have 3 months. I have times 40, 120 quarters. That can be really, really helpful. So it lowers your stress, and it's all about continuous improvement, getting better a little bit each quarter. So you take those annual goals, you break them down into your quarterly goals, and then you take those quarterly goals each month and you say, what am I going to do this month toward I would say keep it to like 3 main goals max. Even if it's 1, that's fine. It's even better. What am I going to do this week toward my monthly goal? And then each day when you start your day, you just say, okay, what can I do today to move me toward my weekly goal? Okay, with that, let's go into some tips and tools on taking action on your plan. Go through this quick, and then we're going to have the investment counselors come on. So there's a few tools that I think can be really helpful. This one on the left looks a little weird. It's a Pomodoro timer. So when I was a business coach, I was a business coach for about 15 years, and I used to help my clients be more effective, be more focused, focus on what really matters most. And one of the tools that I think works great for that is a Pomodoro timer. You can download one of these right on your computer, and you can see across the bottom, there's those 4 dots. You say, I'm going to do 4 Pomodoros today, which is 25 minutes each. The timer starts. You have 25 minutes to really focus on one task, one important task. No other distractions, nothing else. You focus. At 25 minutes, the timer goes off and it says, take a break. You get a 5-minute break. After 5 minutes, timer goes off and it says, get back to work, and you go to your next Pomodoro. So you can set for how many Pomodoros you want to do during a day. Some people just do 1 on one important thing. Some people do 4 like I have here, but really helpful. You can just Google Pomodoro timer and you'll learn a lot more about it. Basecamp is a great project management system. That's where Kathy and I keep all our properties, investment properties in, to manage them, to keep all of our records and all that. So Basecamp is great for project management and for holding a lot of your files, videos, documents, and all that. Belay Solutions, earlier I mentioned about having a bookkeeper, having a virtual assistant. We love Belay Solutions. Kathy and I both, and we use them at Real Wealth Network. We use them in our personal financing, investing and portfolio. So they have bookkeepers at Belay. They're all vetted. They're professional bookkeepers that you can hire part-time. And they also have virtual assistants. And they only hire 2% of the people that apply to work for Belay as virtual assistants and bookkeepers. They only hire 2% of those. They have to have those qualifications. So it's kind of, they do the vetting for you, which is really powerful. And then Intuit QuickBooks. We love QuickBooks for managing that. Your bookkeeper that you hire will most likely will use QuickBooks or QuickBooks Online to track all that. So just some of the great tools for taking action, for staying on track, for managing your portfolio.